Chevrolet demonstrates the two sides of Chevy Citation.
It's a new Chevy kind of compact.
Chevy Citation is compact enough to fit into 3/4 of a parking space and offer gas mileage estimates you'd expect from a smaller car. But inside, Citation has mid-size room for 5 adults and station wagon utility.
The first Chevy of its kind.
This could be the car you've had in mind.
Chevy Citation.
The 1980 Chevrolet Citation was one of the most transformative cars that the domestic auto industry produced in the 20th century, and was also one of the most successful, selling about 800,000 units in its introductory model year of 1980. This represented 3 assembly plants running 3 shifts around the clock to produce just one variant of General Motors X cars. And while the Pontiac Phoenix, Olds Omega, and Buick Skylark were each good sellers in their introductory 1980 model year, it was really the Citation that took the sales crown by far. As you saw in the previously viewed commercial for the 1980 Citation, the vehicle was indeed roomy, and although its exterior dimensions had it classified as a compact car, on the inside it had the space more akin to a mid-size vehicle and could comfortably fit 5 adults or, as you saw, up to 30 bags of groceries in the hatchback form with the rear seat folded down. It was extremely roomy and was also designed to be comfortable, with a very airy cabin with great sight lines, good sound deadening, and overall a comfortable ride. The Citation, however, did have some Achilles heels, most notably its brake system, as well as steering rack issues and some engine and powertrain issues that really doomed it, and consequently its sales were cut in half almost every year from 1980 to its last year of production, 1985. However, the subject of this video is not a complete review of the 1980 to 85 Citation. Instead, we're going to focus on some of the strange, cool, unique, and dare I say quirky features of the 1980 Citation in particular, some that you probably don't know about, that didn't last very long or really weren't talked about when the car was introduced outside of some technical service bulletins and manuals. Let's start with the interior feature and some quirks associated with the Citation, the first of which is its vertically oriented radio that was housed within the instrument cluster and kind of in the way of the gear shift lever when the gear shift lever was placed in drive, making it somewhat hard to operate. Now, while this looks quite funky, the fact of the matter is that Chevrolet had introduced vertically oriented radios in a number of other vehicles, including the C2 Corvette. So this wasn't a novel idea for Chevrolet, and in fact, it would be repeated on some other cars by General Motors for a number of years subsequent to the Citation's introduction. But it was a bit jarring for customers, and it only took a few model years for Chevrolet to redesign the radio from its vertical orientation to the more normal horizontal orientation that everyone was accustomed to. Clearly, the Citation was no Corvette, at least under hood. It did handle relatively well for the time period, particularly given its rack and pinion steering and front-wheel drive, but it certainly didn't have much in the way of horsepower when you really stepped in it, whether you had the 4-banger under hood, 2.5-liter Iron Duke, or the newly introduced for 1980 Chevrolet-derived 60-degree 2.8-liter V6. While we're on the subject of interior bits, the Citation in 1980 introduced another quirky feature that went away not that long thereafter with the introduction of GM's multifunction turn signal, wiper, cruise control, and high beam stalk that would be introduced in the X cars. In 1980, however, if you opted for cruise control in your Citation, the button to activate the cruise control was not located at the end of the turn signal lever. It was in fact located at the end of the gear shift on the automatic transmissions. So this is the only time I've ever seen the cruise control button located here at the end of the gear shift, and it stuck around for, I believe, just one model year in the Citations before the multifunction stock would be introduced and cruise would be placed on that. Third, let's transition under hood and talk about some of the interesting features that the Citation exhibited. Now, by and large, the Citation wasn't anything revolutionary in the suspension department, at least by international standards. for 1980, it did have a new for General Motors front-wheel drive transversely mounted engine and transmission that this was really GM's first effort in doing this. GM had produced front-wheel drive cars before, including the 1966 Tornado and 1967 Eldorado. However, those cars had longitudinally mounted engines and transmissions, different from the Citation. The purpose of the Citation's engine mounting in a transverse fashion was to provide more passenger compartment space, and indeed it accomplished that. However, some service procedures on these transversely mounted engines and transmissions could be difficult, and GM did try to have better and easier service procedures relative to the type of vehicle that this was. The first interesting thing when it comes to service is that you can actually prop the hood on these X cars further vertical than what is allowed by the stock prop rod. And they actually supplied dealers with a separate prop rod that allowed them to open the hood almost vertically to service the vehicle. Take a look here at the dealer demonstration video for technicians, and you can see this special prop rod.
Now, most of the time when you're checking fluids or inspecting the engine, you can use the regular prop rod. But when more room is needed, you use this service prop rod, which is part of the essential tool package. It props the hood straight up, allowing you extra working room.
Well, I'm sure that came in particularly handy for someone who is trying to change the back spark plugs on the V6 engine. And in fact, this dealer training video suggests that that can be done without undoing any of the motor mounts, with a few swivel sockets, shall we say. There's another interesting service feature of these 1980 Citations, and that is the splittable front powertrain cradle. These vehicles had their own cradle, which was rubber mounted to the unibody to help isolate road vibrations. But the interesting part about the Citations in particular is that it could be split in half diagonally for easier service, particularly for cars with manual transmissions, for clutch replacement. This was a General Motors exclusive, and I think, frankly, a really good idea. Take a look at this video from the dealer training series again on the splittable powertrain cradle.
The cradle is the supporting member for the engine and transaxle. The Citation cradle is designed to split diagonally. Now, to split the cradle, follow the proper procedures and use the required special tools, like this engine holding fixture, which is designed to take pressure off the motor mounts. And this axle drive shaft puller is used to remove the axle shaft from the transaxle. Once all of the necessary nuts and bolts have been removed, use the puller to pop the axle shaft out of the transaxle. The driver's side of the cradle now swings out of the way. This provides room for transaxle removal or clutch replacement. To reposition the cradle, basically just reverse the removal procedures. The axle shaft end is tapered and has a locking collar. This collar fits into an inset in the transaxle shaft socket. A large screwdriver or bar can drive the axle shaft back into position. This split cradle is a General Motors exclusive. It adds room for service where there's none on other front-wheel drive cars. Ask a technician who's replaced a clutch on a Rabbit, Omni, or Horizon, and you'll see.
Well, that video made this service procedure look pretty easy, and in fact, I think it was relatively easy overall, and a General Motors exclusive. While we're on the topic of powertrains, one last unique feature of these Citations is the manual transmission that was offered, and that is a 4-speed manual with overdrive, a final ratio of 0.81 to 1. Normally during this time period, only the 5-speed transmissions were overdrive, but GM, in a feat where it undoubtedly was trying to save money, introduced a 4-speed overdrive transmission for customers to offer them the same level of fuel economy as the 5 speeds, but without the incremental cost. I think in general it was relatively well received, aside from the large spacing between the gear ratios, and also the largest problem, I believe, with the manual transmission was the parking brake release on these vehicles, which the handle often pulled through the lower portion of the instrument cluster because of how it was mounted. In any case, I hope you enjoyed this short feature on the 1980 Chevrolet Citation and its strange, cool, and unique and quirky features. Let's close out with another ad for the 1980 Citation. Thanks again for watching.
Introducing the first Chevy of the 80s.
It's a Chevy like no Chevy you have ever seen. It's a thoroughly contemporary driving machine. Chevy Citation, a whole new kind of Chevy with a full of front-wheel drive. It's a Chevy with room for up to five.
The 1980 Chevy Citation, room for 5, front-wheel drive, and an EPA estimate of 24 miles a gallon. It's not only the first Chevy of the 80s, it's a whole new kind of compact car. Over the next few weeks, we're going to demonstrate all kinds of things the Chevy Citation can do.
Chevy of the 80s. First Chevy of its kind. Chevy Citation.
Thanks for watching this video in the 1980 Chevy Citation. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and check out the video thumbnails at bottom left and right for some suggestions for you.